Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about photography basics and we are going to be considering three things: shutter speed, aperture and ISO, and these three combined is what gives you the exposure triangle. Now looking at shutter speed basically is the speed at which the shutter in your camera opens and closes to capture an image. Now it is measured in seconds, so you can have your shutter open for as long as 30 seconds on most cameras to as fast as 8,000ths of a second on some cameras. There are two main divisions for shutter speed, which is a fast shutter speed or a slow shutter speed. A fast shutter speed is what you use almost every day to freeze action. So if you are shooting kids running around, or you are shooting sports, or you are shooting car racing, or let's say you are somewhere where the wind is blowing or there is a lot of motion going on and you want to freeze your subject, you use a fast shutter speed for any of these scenarios. On the other hand, if you don't want to freeze the action and you want to portray a large range of motion in your images, you want a slow shutter speed. And this usually comes in clutch whenever you are shooting astrophotography or long exposures. Now moving on to aperture. The aperture is how open or close your lens is to let in more or less light. There are some lenses with fixed apertures like f2 or f2.8. This means that the widest the lens can open up to is f2 or f2.8. And there are some lenses with variable apertures like f3.5 to 5.6, meaning as you zoom into these lenses, the widest they can open varies from 3.5 to 5.6. The widest aperture of lenses vary from lens to lens, but most of them can stop down to as close as f22. The lower the value of the aperture, like f1.8 or f2.8, the wider the lens can open to let in more light. And the more the value of the aperture, like f16 or f22, the closer the lens will be to let in less light. Another thing to keep in mind is the wider the aperture, the more depth of field you get in your images, meaning the more the background is going to be blurred. And the third part of the exposure triangle is the ISO. The ISO basically is the sensitivity of the sensor to light. Most cameras range from ISO of 100 to 25,600 and some can even go higher than that. The more you increase your ISO, the more sensitive your sensor is going to be to images, meaning you are going to get brighter images. But the brighter the image you get by increasing your ISO, the more grain you are going to introduce into your images. So you want to be really careful when you are bumping up your ISO. These three things combined together is what gives you the exposure triangle. When the three is well set, which is your shutter speed, your aperture and your ISO, you get a well exposed image. And when we're talking a well exposed image, you can see it on the indicator on your camera. There is the negative side, there is the positive side. Whenever the indicator is on the negative side, it means your image is underexposed. And whenever the indicator is on the positive side, it means your image is overexposed. But when it's on the zero mark, it means your image is well exposed. So you need to make sure that you find a balance between these three factors whenever you are capturing your images. And when it's all well done, you get a well exposed image. Another thing you can use to check your exposure whenever you are taking pictures is what is called the histogram. Again, just like the indicator on your camera, whenever the histogram is more to the left, it means your image is underexposed. Or whenever it's more to the right, it means your image is overexposed. You want to expose your image such that your histogram is going to be right in the middle. So here are some tips to help you with your exposure triangle. A rule of thumb for your shutter speed is that whatever focal length you are using, I've made a video about focal length, you can check it up above. Your shutter speed should be double your focal length, which is if you're using a 50mm prime lens, your shutter speed should be at least 1/100th of a second. Then you can adjust from there to compensate for your exposure. For your aperture, whenever you're in a sunny or bright environment, you want to step down your aperture to give you a well exposed image. So instead of shooting at f2 or f2.8, you might shoot at f4 or f5.6. Or if you want a lot of bokeh in your background, which is achieved by a wider aperture, for example f1.8 or f2.8, then you want to increase your shutter speed to compensate for your exposure. And for ISO, whenever you're in a bright environment, you want to bring down your ISO to as low as possible, as this is going to guarantee you a grain-free image. But when you are shooting in dimly lit environment or at night, you want to increase your ISO to compensate for your exposure. Or if you are shooting long exposure or astrophotography, you want to bring down your ISO to as low as possible and make your shutter speed as long as possible to give you a well exposed image. With a good understanding of these three things, shutter speed, aperture and ISO, you are ready to start shooting your images in manual mode. So go out there, take your pictures and have fun while doing it. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you learned something, let me know in the comment section below. Feel free to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.